Basically, I don't think so. We can talk about cricket, at least we can talk about batting without talking about the freak Don Bradman. An average of 99.94. Statistically, no one in any sport has probably outstripped their peers by such a huge margin, right? So if I'll personally say, if this wasn't a recorded historical data, I would consider this as some sort of a mythical legends. I'm telling you, when I was a kid, someone told me it's a 9. I thought it's someone's like creation or something. So Gerard, do we over romanticize Bradman, or was his batting genuinely incomparable?
No, it was like nothing we've ever seen before, really. And I would doubt that we'll ever see anything like that again. He averages what is George Headley is the second best batter of his era, and he averages 60, 61. Herbert Sutcliffe's about the same, right? And you're talking about someone who's averaging 40 runs more than the second best batters of his era. Like, how do you even mentally work that out? And you know, people always bring up Wilt Chamberlain, the NBA player, and I'm like, well, Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points in 1 year, but there have been players who've averaged 40 points quite regularly, right? If Wilt Chamberlain averaged 60 points every single year, he would be Bradman, and he averaged 50 points 1 year. So, you know, statistically, from that perspective, we've never had anyone that much better than the second best player in their era, right? From a sport where we can do counting stats. It might be different from, you know, obviously there's the great Pakistani squash legends, and there's been some snooker players, and Rod Laver as a tennis player, you know, but we're talking purely as counting stats and you know, averages and those sorts of records. We haven't had anyone like Bradman. So there are problems with his record, not problems as in he's not very good, but we only ever saw him play in 2 countries, right? Test cricket. First class cricket he played in other countries and was still very good, but he only ever played Test cricket in 2 countries. He didn't have to face his own attack, right? Which was at times the best in the world. Having said that, he absolutely slaughtered those same bowlers when he played against them in first class cricket. And Bill O'Reilly, who was probably by far the best bowler in the world during his era, hated bowling to Bradman. Hated Bradman in general, but hated bowling to him. So we know, right, that there's no issue from that perspective. Didn't play on wet wickets all that well. I think I talk about that in the book, that actually probably proves that he was sent from the future a little bit, because his game was almost set up for the next generation rather than the generation he was in. And could be rattled by the short ball, but still in a bodyline series managed to average 50 against it, right? Which is with a good strike rate. Yeah, so if that's the worst that you've done, it's still, and then you can break down that bodyline one a little bit, because I think one of the games they didn't bowl bodyline that much, and that's when he made the 100. So, you know, there are still arguments within that. But I did this the other day on one of my podcasts, and we're trying to sort of put this together of, if you look at all the different skills that you would look at as elite batting skills, he's probably a 9 or a 10 on almost every single one of them, right? And maybe an 8 on a couple of them. Right? Maybe a 5 on wet wickets if you want to be unfriendly, and I'd have to have a look at what the overall average was on wet wickets, but I don't think he was terrible on wet wickets. He's probably like a 7 on wet wickets, maybe, if I'm being fair on that. And so you have a player who was elite in every single skill of batting, and that just doesn't come along very often, right? That's not a normal thing that you see in a player. And on top of that, just the psychological way that he looked at cricket was very different to everyone else. I think it was. Not only was he a professional in an era when, you know, professionalism was just sort of coming through and everything else, he was like a hyper professional, right? Like, you know, he was like the professional's professional in that period, and he had this incredible method that was almost impossible to get him out. Right, there wasn't any sort of a weak spot. So, you know, I think it's in Tim Wigmore's book in Test Cricket. He talked to a lot of the guys who bowled to Sachin, and they talk about the wobble ball weirdly in the 90s. And that was one of the things they tried to do to Sachin was, if you could take the ball from outside off stump back into him, they were like, hey, there's a way of getting him out, right? Go back and listen to the bowlers who bowled to Bradman. They don't even come up with an idea of how to get him out. They don't even have a plan of what you could possibly do on your best day to get him out. He just was that next level that we have never seen before. And, as you know, you can make an argument maybe no sport's ever seen before.
So, if do you really think that it's his work ethics that actually made him so different, and he outscored all his peers by such a huge margin? And like, if I have to ask you, do you think he's the ultimate batting outlier?
Oh, he's definitely the ultimate batting outlier. No, I don't think it's his work ethic. I think, but to go back, it's everything, right? It's the fact that he was very quick on his feet, right? So it's a small thing, but you know, I was talking to someone who worked in basketball about this recently. He was asking me about cricket athleticism. He's like, one thing I don't understand as someone who's watched a bit of cricket is like what the athleticism is. And I said, so in basketball, your first step is really important, right? So my son's not the quickest kid in the world, right, over 100 meters, but his first step is lightning. And so trying to keep him in front of you on a basketball court is so hard because once he gets past your hip, he's there, right? Inzamam al-Haq, who's going to call him an athlete? I went back and watched him. Have a look at his first step. Because part of it is premeditation. So if you can be fast as well, right? And Bradman was incredibly fast. So Bradman is reading the ball before it comes down to him and is incredibly fast to move towards it, right? That combination of those two things means that he's in a position well before any other player is. And he can play shots that other people can't play because he's already worked out what the delivery is. And he's almost already programmed what is the best shot to be able to play to that ball before anyone else in that situation has managed to do it, right? And so you know, and then that's one skill we're talking about. He has that ability for pretty much every high level cricket skill imaginable, right? He has it for all of them. That ability to be like, I'm going to do this for this ball. I'm going to do this for this ball. I'm going to pick the right option every time. So Sachin Tendulkar is a perfect example of a player who picks the right option every time, right? But Brian Lara didn't, right? Garfield Sobers didn't. Lots of players don't pick the right option every time, right? So Bradman is picking the right option every single time. He's got more time and space than anyone else. His ability to get forward and back means that he can turn the ball into what he wants. He can turn any ball from off stump, even outside off stump, to the leg side anytime he wants to be able to do that. The minute you bowl in the channel outside off stump, he will be able to pierce the gap. So Sachin Tendulkar is a brilliant player, but teams will tell you that you have the ability with Sachin Tendulkar to set a field that he will respect. Right? You won't stop him, but he will respect it. I heard that with some other great players as well. Whereas Brian Lara, that doesn't matter where the fielders are, because Brian Lara is seeing the ball so early and has the ability to open or close his wrists in such a way that he will just hit the ball past the fielders all the time. So Sachin Tendulkar's ability to pick the best shot to play for each ball, with Brian Lara's ability to hit the ball into the gaps. Right? That's what you're starting to combine with someone like Don Bradman. And as I said before, it's like he's in the 99th percentile in some of these skills as well. So and then also he was the best player of spin in the world and the best player of pace in the world at the same time, right? And you could throw in other bits of that too. He was the best player of slow spin and the best player of fast spin. And that was a thing in his day. Like spinners were vastly different speeds to each other. He was the best player of the moving ball, right? And he was still one of the best players of short, fast bowling, even if that wasn't his main skill. He's probably in the top 5 of that as well. So those players, you go through the history of the game. When have we ever had someone who's had that many skills? He's also probably the best runner between wickets in his era.
What?
So
see, you know what?
You just keep going, right? Like, you know, like Brian, just to take it back to Brian Lara and Sachin Tendulkar, who I both have in the top 5 of all time. Brian Lara was very good at getting off strike, but not a brilliant runner between wickets. Sachin Tendulkar, pretty good runner between wickets, but we wouldn't have him in the top 10 of all time of running between the wickets. And he certainly wouldn't have been thought of as in the top 3 or 4 of his era. Like he wasn't Steve Waugh or someone, you know, or Ricky Ponting or someone like that, right? Or Jonty Rhodes. And so again, you're like, every way that you look at Don Bradman, he's at that top level of you can't set a field to him. He's not going to play the shot that you want him to play, but he is going to pick the exact right shot to play. He's never going to lose patience, but he's also going to score at such a regular rate that he's going to put pressure back on your team, right? There isn't a kind of bowling that is going to dismiss him. There isn't a secret, you know, I remember Graham Pollock, who, you know, was obviously, had it not been for apartheid, probably goes down as one of the top 10 greatest batters of all time, and still has a great record even without that, right? Ian Chappell said to me, with Graham Pollock, you could bowl bounces and you could kind of slow him down a little bit. You could stop him, right? You could change the tempo of Graham Pollock and it would make him do something different. Again, you can't do that to Don Bradman. He's going to either fend you off and find singles, or he's going to hook or pull you, right? So there isn't like that, Len Hutton, incredible player, Len Hutton, one of the most undervalued batters in the history of the game. You can slow Len Hutton down to about a strike rate of 30 to 35. So yeah, you can't get him out, but he's putting no pressure back on you, right? He's just holding up his end. Bradman, I think his strike rate's around 50 to 55, which for his era is quite quick.
Yep.
So he's putting pressure back on you again. So it's not as if, you can do anything to him. You bowl wide of off stump and he smashes you through extra cover to backward point, right? And I say backward point to third man with him. He sort of had the ability to play quite straight, but also very, very fine. So where do you put the fielders, right? You almost, if you have a look at the amount of times he picks the gap, a bit like Kane Williamson, to backward point or to third man, you almost need a third in for him the whole time. But the minute you put that fielder in, he starts smashing the ball through covers.
Yep.
So there isn't, and he can hit straight. I would say that hitting straight was probably the thing he did the least, weirdly. But if the minute you start putting the fielder squarer, he will just hit you straight. So it's so hard to sort of put him in a bottle and sort of stop him in any single direction. And that it's the combination of all the elite skills. There are players who are probably, and Sachin's a really good example of this, who have a lot of the different skills that Bradman had, right? But he doesn't have the exact same skills that Bradman had, or as many of the skills as Bradman had. And so once you do that, where do you bowl to him? How do you bowl to him? What's your fielding plan? Well, it looked like teams have no idea, right? And so maybe it would have been more interesting if people had kept bowling bounces to him. And I don't think the West Indies ever tried bodyline to him. I think that would have been fascinating because, but I don't think it would have changed his average all that much, mate, right? And you hear things like, oh, he never had to go to Asia. He would have averaged 100 in Asia in that period because he was playing incredible spin bowlers on uncovered wickets and quite often wet wickets, right? He didn't have an issue against spin. This isn't like Ricky Ponting, right? Ricky Ponting doesn't know how to play spin until he goes to Asia, right? He just doesn't, right? Because Australian wickets are completely different. In Bradman's era, they were playing great spinners. Have a look. Australia's best bowlers were Grimmett and O'Reilly. They didn't even have a great seam bowling lineup. Hugh Tayfield, right? Like all these incredible spinners were around in Australia, South Africa, West Indies. Like, I think South Africa's best bowler was Cyril Vincent. He's a left-arm finger spinner, I think, as well at that point. Most of the best bowlers in the world were spinners pre-World War II. Different conversation for a different day. But there is this whole idea of, oh, if he'd gone to Asia. No. He played on Manning wickets, which spun a lot, right? We know that from first-class cricket, and he still scored runs. So anywhere he would have gone, he would have been able to do that. But he doesn't have the same stress testing that Sachin Tendulkar does, right? Just because the era is different. And Jack Hobbs is the same, and W.G. Grace is the same. They just don't have the same level of stress testing. And someone pointed this out when we were researching the book about Barry Richards. Of like, a lot of people like say Barry Richards is one of the greatest batters of all time, but they don't have the two VJs in that, right? And all of those have shorter careers. I think you could say with Barry Richards that he conquered Australia, South Africa, and England. But you could also say those are roughly the same. And if we had a player coming through who was really good in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and India, we would still say, but could they have done it on Asian wickets, and could they have done it in other situations, which is very, very fair, right? And I think you have to weigh all of those things up, which is one reason I think that Sachin gets such a bump, because he was so great everywhere, right? And I think that's why he gets that. Bradman isn't going to get that. But there are times during Sachin's career where you could make very good claims that he wasn't actually the best batter in the world, right? There is no time from his second test match until his last test match that you could say that Bradman is not the best batter in the world. You could say that Headley is not that far behind him. You could say that Sutcliffe and Hutton and Hammond are incredible. You can't say they're better than Bradman, and you can't even say they're on the same level as Bradman. You can't even say that they're particularly close to Bradman. CLR James, tried to do that over and over again. And like, I think Headley's incredible and very underrated. He ain't Bradman.